Okay, Tamaya, today we're going to be working on the QAR strategy. What is QAR? QAR stands for question-answer relationship. This is a strategy that we use to figure out different types of comprehension questions and how to best answer them. What does QAR stand for?
Question-answer relationship.
Perfect. Okay, so there are 4 types of QAR questions that fall into 2 separate categories. The first category is in the book, and the second category is in my head. So the first 2 types of questions that fall under in the book questions are write there questions and think and search questions. So write there questions, the answer is easily found in the text. The exact words for the questions and answers are located in the same sequence. In the same sentence. And then you have the think and search questions. The answer is in the text but requires gathering information from different places in the selection. So you have to look in different parts of the story or in an article to find those answers. Do you have any questions so far?
No.
Okay. So then the second type that we have are the in my head questions. Those are the author and you questions and on my own. So author and you, or author and me as it's often referred to, the answer is not in the text. The reader combines previous knowledge with text information to create a response, so that you rely on what you already know and also what you read to come up with an answer. So those are author and me questions. And then there are those on my own questions that we create based off of what we think or our personal experiences that may closely relate to what's happened in the text. Okay? Do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay. So I want to go ahead and go into my first example, right? And my first example is the Itsy Bitsy Spider. You know the song, right? Okay. So instead of singing it, I'm just going to read it. The itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout. Down came the rain and washed the spider out. Out came the sun and dried up all the rain, and the itsy bitsy spider went up the spout again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Itsy Bitsy Spider, the song, and I have gone ahead and I've created some QAR questions, and I want to go ahead and break them into specific groups, and then I'm going to walk you through my thinking process to answer those questions, okay? And if you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask me as we go through, all right?
Okay.
Okay, so I went ahead and I took that same format that I used in the previous slide, and I created 2 in the book questions, and I also created 2 in my head questions. So the first question is, who went up the water spout? The second one is, explain why the spider got washed out of the spout. The in my head questions that were created was, do you think the spider gave up easily? And has there ever been a time when you felt like giving up because something happened that took you off track? Now, what we're going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and take you to my answers. So when I think about who went up the water spout, I can go directly back into the text. And clearly it says here, the itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout. Okay? The next question was, explain why the spider got washed out of the spout. Well, down came the rain and washed the spider out. The next one is, do you think the spider gave up easily? Right? Naturally, no, I don't think the spider gave up easily. And the reason I don't think the spider gave up easily was because this out came the sun and dried up all the rain, and the itsy bitsy spider went up the spout again. Lastly, it says, has there ever been a time when you felt like giving up because something happened that took you off track? And I think that naturally we all have those kind of experiences where something happens and we just feel like we can't go on anymore. So what I went ahead and I did was I created my own responses. So who went up the water spout? The itsy bitsy spider did. Why did the spider get washed out of the spout? Well, the rain came down and washed the spider out. Do you think the spider gave up easily? The spider did not give up easily, because once the rain dried up, the spider climbed up the spout again. And then lastly, has there ever been a time when you felt like giving up because something happened that took you off track? And I said yes. Getting my degree over the past 2 years has been hard, and it's made me feel like giving up, especially when I don't get good grades. And I think that's something we can all relate to, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So do you have any questions with QAR?
No.
No? Okay. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to go into our next exercise where we're actually going to work through this one together. Okay? And so this one is called the odd spider. All right. So what I went ahead and did is I have the text here, but I also went ahead and I printed it out. And so it's here right in front of you, okay? And I also have the same little template so you can actually do some work with that. So I'll keep that out of your way. And what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to go ahead and read it out loud.
Most spiders live on land, but its spider is different. It spends most of its time underwater. How does it breathe? It breathes by making a tent full of air bubbles underwater. First, it spins a web in the shape of a bell. When it fixes the web, the plant under the water next to swim up to the top of the water and trap a tiny bubble of air with its hairy back legs. It's dragged the bubble to its web. It does this many times until its home is full with air. Then it sits nice and snug in its web and feed on tiny fishes and other water animals.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for reading for me. Now, what I want to do is I want to just go back and I want to read it for you because there were a few things that I realized that you missed out or some words that you replaced. So I just want you to follow along with your eyes or with your fingers just so that you make sure that you keep on track so that I can go ahead and read it to you. So you got one read and I'm going to go ahead and get a read in as well. The title is The Odd Spider. Most spiders live on land, but this spider is different. It spends most of its time underwater. How does it breathe? It breathes by making a tent full of air bubbles underwater. First, it spins a web in the shape of a bell. Then, it fixes the web to plants under the water. Next, it swims up to the top of the water and traps a tiny bubble of air with its hairy back legs. It drags the bubble to its web. It does this many times until its home is full of air. Then it sits nice and snug in its web and feeds on tiny fish and other water animals. Okay? Really, really interesting spider, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now I want to go ahead and I want to provide you with some QAR questions, right? So what did we say QAR stands for?
Question, answer, and relationship.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so I just went ahead and I took the same, template that we used earlier, and I wanted you to have it right in front of you. And then I have some questions here. And what I want you to do is I want you to take these 4 questions that I cut out, and I'd like for you to place them where they go. So I know it might be a little hard for you to determine off the top of your head. Excuse me. So I went ahead and I pulled up these question, answer, relationship, sentence starters so that you would get some additional assistance in figuring out where do each of these go. So if you need this, it's right here for you. Okay, so I want you to just go ahead and place them in their correct spot. And we can glue them on after. Go ahead and read the question.
How does the shape of the web helps the spider?
Okay.
this one is, why does the spider attract the web to a plant underwater?
Okay.
How does the spider breathe?
Okay.
What makes the spider unusually different from other spiders?
Okay, so now I want you to determine where each of these go on this. So where are our what is our right there question? What's going to be our right there question? That we know we can look right back in here, or you can look, right back on here and figure and get your answer directly in the text in the same order.
The spider breathe.
Okay. Okay, great. So your right there question is, how does the spider breathe? Perfect. What comes next? Next, we're going to look at think and search. So which one of these is a think and search question? So you might want to line them up together so that you can get a good view of the three of them. Which one of these questions will you be able to go back into the text? You still have to do a little bit of thinking, but it's there for the most part. Okay, so that's going to be, what's going to be your think and search question?
Oh,
So we're right here on think and search. Which one is going to be your think and search question? You might want to talk it out so that. So what question are you looking at right now?
this one.
What's this one?
What makes the spider unusually or different from other spiders?
Okay, so did we talk about what made this spider different or unusual?
No.
Okay, so we already know it's not going to be an in the book question, right? Or in the text question. So we'll have to look in my head. Do you think that that would be an author in me question, or do you think that would be a on my own question?
Author me question.
Okay, great. So that's going to be an author in me question. What makes the spider unusual or different from
Other spiders.
other spiders? So what's the next one we're going to look at?
How does the shape of the web help the spider?
Okay, how does the shape of the web help the spider? Did we talk about the shape of the web? It says first it spins a web in the shape of a bell. Did we talk about the shape of the web okay, so where do you think that's going to go? In the text, or is that going to be an in my head question?
In the text.
Okay, it's going to be an in the text question. Perfect. So we're going to put that right here. And then what's going to be the next one? Naturally, right? By process of elimination, you realize that your on my own question is going to be, why would the spider attach the web to a plant under the water? Okay? Well, let's look at that one. Why would the spider attach the web to a plant under the water? Did we talk about that here in the text? It says, then it fixes the web to plants under the water. Does it tell us why it does it? No, right? So do you think that that's going to be a on our own question that we're going to come to a conclusion about? Or do you think that it might be something that the author tells us, so we'll be able to develop some context clues and we'll have to do a little bit of our own thinking?
On my own?
All the way on your own? You'd have to figure that all out by yourself? No, right? So maybe we want to go ahead and switch this, right? Okay, perfect. So this is what's going to happen. We're moving the question, why would the spider attach the web to a plant under the tree, to an author and me question? So we're going to take some of what the text says, and we're also going to take some of what we think and create an answer. And then we're going to put what makes the spider unusual or different from other spiders under on my own. Okay? Great. So now let's talk about actually creating an answer for these, okay? So what I went ahead and did is I have the same thing you have here, okay? So you worked through it a little bit more than I did, but I was able to help guide you through the thinking process. Now what I want to do is I want to work towards creating an answer. So if you don't mind, I'm going to actually move these a little out of the way, right? So that we can use the space that we have to actually write a response. So here's a pen for you. Now, so the first question was, how does the spider breathe? And I'm going to go back here just so you can see it. And let's go ahead and look for that. It says most spiders live on land, but this spider is different. It spends most of its time underwater. How does it breathe? Oh, okay. What does it say?
It breathes by making a tent full of air bubbles underwater.
Okay, great. So you're going to go ahead and write it there. But what we want to do is we want to make sure we leave enough space so that we can go back and glue these on. Okay? Making a tent full of air bubbles okay, good job, underwater. Period. Great. So then let's look down at our think and search question. So this question was, how does the shape of the web help the spider? So how does the shape of the web help the spider? Let's go back. I'll read and you can just kind of look, and maybe if you find it first, you can tell me you found it. It says, first it spins a web in the shape of a bell. Then it fixes the web to plants under the water. Next, it swims up to the top of the water and traps a tiny bubble of air. Then it sits nice and snug in its web and feeds on tiny fish and other water animals. So it sits right here. But then if you look here, it says it breathes by making a tent full of air bubbles underwater. So if we think about a tent, what's the shape of a tent?
A triangle.
Right? But we said this one, it says specifically that the web is in the shape of a bell, right? So if we have a tent, where do you think we're going to put the air bubbles so that we can actually be snug?
Underwater.
Right? So it's underwater, okay. But where do you think the air would go? Where would the air bubbles go so that it can breathe?
Like, they'll probably be like a little hole.
Okay, but remember the shape. So what's the shape? We said it's the shape of a bell, right? So it's probably curved, and then the bottom part fans out a little bit, right? But let's look at that tent, because we already know like a tent is like a little triangle, right? Mm-hmm. Where do you think the spider would actually stay in this little tent in order to breathe air? Where in the web?
Like the little hole part.
Okay, so the whole part is pretty big because it's at the bottom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So where do you think the spider is going to actually stay so that it could be snug?
On the line that they have.
Okay, do you think you can draw it for me to help me to get a better understanding of what you're talking about?
I'm not a good drawer.
It's okay. So what is that?
The little line that they be.
So we said that this is not a circle web, right? It's a web that's like in the shape of a bell, right? So maybe something like that. Okay, and I'm not the best drawer either. Okay, so we have this spider who creates this, move your hand for me, a bell-shaped web, and then it takes air bubbles. So it's either one of two ways. It either packs the air bubbles in here, right? Or it packs the air bubbles down here. but it's got to find its way somehow so that it could be snug. So do you think it's snug in between? Do you think it's snug up here? Because remember, there's water.
It's probably snug like up here.
Right, so it's probably snug up here. Now let's look back at this question. How does the shape of the web help the spider? How does it help the spider? Well,
The shape of a bell. Right there, it fits the web to put under the water.
okay. Let's look down at the bottom. It says, then it sits nice and snug in its web and feeds on tiny fish and other water animals. So how does the shape of the web help the spider? Well, I'm going to say that maybe the shape of the web helps the spider because the spider's able to be really comfortable because it's kind of like a little cocoon almost, right? He gets to kind of hang out in this snug space in the middle of all these air bubbles, but he's still able to trap fish and other plants inside of here. Okay? Do you think you can like put that into a sentence for me?
I'll try.
Okay, that's all. That works. So go ahead, write down here. You want to go ahead and try and put that into a sentence. It's okay. Talk it out if you need to. The spider will try to what?
Relax under the little cocoon.
Relax in the web. I use cocoon as an example, but it's not actually a cocoon, it's a web. Okay. So now let's go on to the in my head questions. Okay. So the first in my head question is, why would the spider attach the web to a plant underwater? Okay. So it does talk about that, but it doesn't tell us why. So let's go back and try and think about what the author told us, but then let's also think about what we might think is happening, okay? It says, then it fixes its web to plants underwater. Next, it swims up to the top of the water and traps a tiny bubble of air. So first it spins a web in the shape of a bell, then it fixes the web to plants underwater. Why do you think it would fix its web to a plant or plants under the water?
So it can like stick so it won't come off.
Okay, that's a great answer. You want to go ahead and write that in this space. So it, what is it can stick? What is it?
The plant.
The plant? We want the plant to stick? Well, the plant is growing from underwater.
The web.
The web. Okay, great. So you want to try your best to answer that in complete sentences.
So it can stick to the plant. Alright. So it
Well, why would it want to stick to the plant?
so like it can like get a grip.
Right, so that it can get a firm grip or a tight grip. So you want to add that to your response because you don't want to stop too short. Okay?
To the plant.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. And lastly, are on my own question. So this is the one where we're gonna have to do some thinking, all right? What makes this spider unusual or different from other spiders? So think about what you know about spiders. So for example, see how you started to draw this picture and you kind of gave some circle, like a circle, and you started to draw like the lines that extend out. What do you think makes this spider, the odd spider, really different from other spiders?
I know a spider has 8 legs.
Did we talk about legs in here though? So we don't know that this spider doesn't necessarily have 8 legs. What really, really makes this spider different from other spiders? So one thing I'm going to suggest is where the spider lives. Where does the spider live?
Underwater.
Underwater. So typically, where do spiders live?
Underwater.
All spiders live underwater?
Not all spiders.
Do most spiders live underwater? Is this the first time you've heard of a spider living underwater? Right? So don't you think that that's something that makes this spider really, really different from other spiders?
Mm-hmm.
Yes? Okay. So that's one thing we can talk about. Do you think it's kind of interesting or strange that this spider, not only does it live underwater, but it also breathes underwater too?
Interesting.
Right? So let's go ahead and let's start to create a sentence. So how would we start this sentence off? Is it a thing? Is it 2 things? Is it 3 things?
8 things.
So we only talked about 1 thing?
No, 3 things.
What 3 things did we talk about?
We talk about spiders living underwater.
That's 1.
Spiders.
Spiders or this spider?
This spider.
Okay, and then what else?
Then we talked about plants growing underneath water.
Okay, well, we know that plants can grow underneath water, but the question is what? What makes this spider unusual or different from other spiders?
Probably spiders. Like spiders can blow their little bubbles, like from underneath water.
So are all spiders like that?
Not all spiders.
Is this spider like that?
Mhm.
Okay, so we talked about one thing that was unusual about this spider is that it doesn't live on land, right?
They don't live on.
And then the second thing was the fact that it's able to breathe underwater. So those are going to be the 2 things that we discussed that are unusual or different about this spider in comparison to others. Okay? So what I'd like for you to do now is I'd like for you to go ahead and write that.